The creative economy has tripled in size in the past 15 years. So that
And you're defining creative
yeah,
economy as
okay.
how?
So let's back this up. So usually when you think about this, you think about urban planner and economist Richard Florida, who wrote The Rise of the Creative Classes. And he had two categories of creatives in there. There were professional creatives and the super creative core. Super creative core are folks like us. They're creative entrepreneurs, creative artists, creative writers, these people who are inventing culture, inventing the future. And creative professionals are things like you're a doctor, you're an accountant, you're trying to bring in novelty and new techniques and be creative inside the discipline. And those are the two classes. When you look at both of them, they both exploded. The super creative core went from like 100 million people to 300 million people.
Hmm.
The numbers in America are, it's $1 trillion economy. And it's interesting because Adobe's State of Create study, Adobe's done a bunch of really great studies. Like once every 5 years, they do a global study on creativity. They're phenomenal studies, and they've started them back in the 2000s. In their 2016 study, they found that creatives and people who use creativity in their work out earn non-creatives by 13%. It's in America, it's $1 trillion economy. Globally, it's like a $3 trillion economy or $3.2 trillion economy. So it's a big chunk. In America, it's like 4.5% of the GDP comes out of creativity. So and it's the fastest growing sector, and for good reason. Back in 2010, IBM did a very famous study of CEOs.
Mhm.
And they wanted to know what's the quality in the 21st century that will most help a CEO thrive. Creativity topped the list. There was a more recent study a couple years ago that looked at the same question. They came back with analytical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. And I will tell you that that's redundant, because really good analytical thinking is creative. Really good problem solving is creative. So the whole thing is essentially creativity and creative problem solving.
So bring it back to AI then. AI is a creativity enhancing tool,
Which I think it is.
which can take people who are not part of the creative community into the creative ecosystem. Question is the value in terms of earning power, in terms of being in business, going to demonetize as the number of creatives?
That's an interesting question. Here, let me go back to your AI creativity. First of all, let me give it, creativity is technically defined as the creation of novel and useful ideas. And the useful is important because it's not just enough to have something cool idea in their head. You actually have to put it in the world. You have to show it to other people. So there's risk taking involved in the creative process also at the end of it. When we look at creativity, one of the things, so I know we're both interested in this. When we look at the progress in AI, people are looking at it as if it was separate from progress in consciousness hacking technologies, also on the human side of the equation. So it's not just that we're augmenting the machines, the humans are being augmented. If you think about, let's just talk about flow and creativity. So my old organization, the Flow Genome Project, did a big study with CEO leaders. We wanted to know how much more productive or creative they were in flow. McKinsey did this really famous study of CEO leaders and found they were 500% more productive in flow. It was like a 10-year study, went around the globe, talked to tons of people. It's self-reported, so you always got to brain
And how long, what percentage of their working life are they in flow?
Well,
a small fraction.
No, it's an open, that's an open question hold on, let me get there. Creativity, we found people on average were 700% more creative. That's what they reported. And we were like, God, that number's crazy. So creativity can be broken down. This psychologist named Mumford did it into 8 categories: problem identification all the way through like solution implementation. And we tried to measure those independently in flow. And we found that each of those 8 categories increases by 40 to 60%. So breaking it down, which starts to add towards those big numbers. My point, when 30 years ago, when the AI conversation started, humans were trying to use psychology to train people into flow. And the classic example I always give is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the godfather of flow psychology, wrote a book called Flow in Sports, where he worked with the top sports psychologists, and they tried to use the psychology of flow to train up top athletes, and they sucked at it. They're bad. Books in print, you can see their hit rate is terrible. with the Flow Research Collective, with our core flow training, Zero to Dangerous. We put
By the way, another name I
another
love,
great
Zero,
name.
Zero to Dangerous.
15,000 people in 160 countries, 28 industries have taken that class.
Yeah.
On average, we see a 73.8% increase in
By the way, do you
amount
know
of
that
time and flow.
62.4% of people make up stats
Exactly.
on the spot?
On the spot. I'm not making this stat up. You can find it on our website and the data. My point is, if you're 700% more productive in flow or more creative in flow, and we've taken it from we don't know how to train this at all to, oh no, it's reliable, it's repeatable, and that's a 73% increase in the amount of time spent in flow. So usually when people come to us, they're like, no, I get into flow maybe once, twice a week. And by the time they're done, it's twice a day. And it's pretty steady and consistent. That and this is like low tech. We haven't even started adding in there's a revolution in what you could call, for lack of a better term, consciousness raising technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw the first wave were like meditation apps and things like that. The second wave, so for example, I have a new partnership with Vital Neuro. They make a phenomenal EEG headset, and it's a neurofeedback EEG.
Is that why you shave your hair like that?
So, yes,
so you can
exactly.
get the electrodes back on there?
Exactly. It's exactly right. But I've been watching, this is like portable EEG tech. I've been playing with this stuff since the early 2000s. And in the early 2000s, like I've got every single portable EEG device that's ever made. I've got a cool display of it. They were terrible. Now they're portable, they work. And one of the reasons we partnered with them is we identified, my lab identified like 5 or 6 neuromarkers for flow. Was we transitioned to a flow state that nobody had ever been able to find before. And when this was 3 years ago, and 3 years ago, we were like trying to figure out, can we measure this? Can we, blah, blah, blah. We needed fMRIs, and it was $500,000 to do the experiment. We couldn't even do it. They can now measure it with this freaking port 3 years later. And the same signal that we couldn't get it with fMRI, we can now get it here. And you know what? You just had Mary Lou Jepsen on. We've just interviewed her, talked to her. Her technology takes us farther. So my point is AI is evolving. Humans and our ability, there's a revolution going on in our ability to take advantage of our consciousness. And this is before the next wave of neurotech, as we know, that's BCI, that's brain computer interface. And that takes it to a whole other level. So it's not, humans aren't static in this picture. That's the thing that people forget when they have the AI conversation. They're like, AI is exploding. I'm like, all right, great, but you're 700% more creative in flow. And that's gone from this rare state to something that's reliable.
So listen, I can imagine if I have Jarvis on, and I say maximize me in flow, that it will be able to do things as an AI to basically continuously tip me into flow.
Oh, so all the cool stuff, most of the cool stuff because we're doing a lot of work. We have my belief is that humans in flow collaborating with each other and AI are going to own the future. And is this going to be true 50 years from now, 30 years from now? I don't know. But is it going to be true for the next 10 to 15 years? Absolutely. For sure. And I think it'll be true for a lot longer, but I definitely think it's going to be true for this next period. And a lot of what we're doing, we have a fully dedicated research line here. It's all on interface design. What's the flowiest interface? What's the best way to work with an AI to produce? Because I'll give you something that's really wild that never used to happen. So in that challenge skills sweet spot, right? Anxiety is the upper level. So if you overload cognitive load, right, your brain can hold 7 items at once in working memory, but that's digits. If you go to something like concepts, most people tap out at 3 or 4, right? This is why I always say—
Which is amazingly
narrow,
low.
It's a tiny bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't get the brain takes in, if you go by Marvin Zimmerman's calculations, and they're probably way off, it's 11 million bits of information from our senses every second. That's what they counted, believe it or not. Our bandwidth of human attention is 120 bits.
Yeah.
You're using 60 bits of attention to listen to me talk. If we're talking together and there's a faucet dripping,
I'm not noticing it.
Everybody's tapped out, right?
This is the whole basis of cognitive bias.
Yeah. So one of the things that you've noticed, we talked about it a second ago, it used to take you with Google, right, to get to over, I've got an answer to a question. I need as much data as I possibly can get. You could really spend like a couple hours doing your research until you filled up your brain and like pushed yourself into anxiety, that challenge skills sweet spot. With ChatGPT or any of the AI systems, you can get such accurate information. you can overload cognitive load in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've done it where I'm researching something and I'm 10 minutes in and I've literally blown out my brain for most of the day.
But then you can go to the LLM and say, can you please pull out the 5 most important concepts that are, you can use that as a sorting mechanism.
Yes.